Hey y'all, it's Jess from Sunflower Dairy. I'm out in the greenhouse today and I'm here to talk to you about soil blocks, and then also I will be planting celery seeds as well. So for soil blocks, a lot of people, they'll plant in trays with the little sections in their seed trays, which that's great. I do that as well. But with soil blockers, you get these individual little soil blocks that you're not going to need those actual like sectioned off seed trays. You'll just have the little soil blocks like this, and then they even have a little divot in the top where you can plant right into the soil block. So these are really nice. So normally you wouldn't put these on a plate like this, but I'm just using something white so you can see the soil blocks a little bit better. But so basically you will use something that will be able to hold water, because you're going to be watering soil blocks from the bottom, and then the soil blocks will absorb the water. So I like to use just a regular tray that doesn't have any holes in it or anything, and this is a nice sturdy one so that it won't be flopping all over the place. But instead of having two pieces, an actual like insert that sits inside of this, you'll just set the soil blocks in here. And instead of having to buy trays every year, especially the little flimsy ones that are sectioned off that you would be planting into, you would just be making your soil blocks, and then if you get the nice strong trays that you can use year after year, you should have these for a really long time, and then you'll just have to make your soil blocks and you won't have to get that extra insert piece. And because usually those, depending on what you get, those can be pretty flimsy and they can break as well, the little inserts that go inside of these, especially if you want to be bottom watering. It's good to have the two different trays if you are doing seed trays. So that's what I like to do. And the nice thing is with the soil blocks, you have the small soil block, and then you can also get the bigger soil block, and then these, as these grow and get bigger, you can get a little insert for your soil blocker that will be the same size as this, and then these just fit right inside of those like so. And then you don't have to deal with extra like flower pots or vegetable pots. You don't have to deal with up potting. You can just put them in a bigger soil block, so you don't have to deal with buying multiple pots or trays. You can just keep up potting in your soil blocks, so that makes it really nice. So I'll show you all real quick how I am going to make some soil blocks, because I'm sure you all are wondering how you do that. So I'm going to be using the smaller soil blocker right here, and that, if you can see in there, that has the little divots, so when you actually make your soil blocks, you're going to have that little dent in the top so you can just put your seed right in. So for soil blocks, you want to make sure that your soil is nice and moist. So I have dampened this a little bit, and so you want it just enough where, now you don't want this too dry and you don't want it too wet, but you want it just enough so when you squeeze it, it's gonna stay together, because that's how you do the soil blocks, is you're pretty much packing it into the soil blocker so that it will hold its shape. So you want the soil to hold its shape, but you don't want to squeeze it and like have tons of water. Like, you don't want it to be like soup, but you want it to hold its shape. So pretty much this soil was like this. And then I just put enough water in here. I mixed it together well, and I put enough water in here so that it holds its shape. So I have my solid tray here, which I'll be able to water the soil blocks in. Alright, so we're going to take our soil blocker, we're going to press down side to side, and we're also going to twist and make sure that we get a good even amount of soil pressed in to the soil blocker. And it's good to check too to see if it's getting packed in there pretty good, because see, a lot of that's packed in there pretty good, but there's a couple spots where we need to get it in there better. So we're just gonna keep twisting it in the soil, then we'll check it again. Alright, that looks like it will be pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to take my soil blocker, you're going to set it down, and then pretty much you're going to leave the blocker here, but you're just going to put your hand on the top and then take your fingers and then pull up. And there we go. Alright, so there's our little soil blocks. See, we have a nice little soil block right there. It holds its shape. So some people will mix their own seed starting soil, and then most people, they'll just get seed starting soil or potting soil, or pretty much you just want a loose, light, fluffy soil to plant your seeds into. You don't want any like big clumpy stuff that the seeds are going to have a hard time getting through. You want nice fluffy soil for seed starting soil. So, but pretty much just a nice light fluffy mixture like this, and then you get your soil, all good for your soil blocker, and then you should be good to go. So we are going to be planting celery seeds in this. So I'm going to be doing a red celery. Here, red celery. Alright, so this red celery here, the seeds are pretty tiny. See, you can barely see those. So when you're using tiny seeds, you can take a toothpick, and you'll get this toothpick, you'll dip it in water, and then you'll just take the end of it and then touch your seed and pick up your seed. And then we're just going to put this in the top of the soil block. So celery seeds, you want to surface sow them. So you don't want to bury these deeply or anything. So the little indents in the soil blocks are perfect for the celery seeds, and then you'll just press them to the soil a little bit, and then they just need to be surface sowed, so you're not going to be putting anything on top of them. So I'm just going ahead and putting these into each soil block here. And celery takes a very long time to germinate. Last year, I started my celery at the same time I started all the brassicas, and the celery took way longer. So, I've heard that celery can take like almost a month sometimes. It just grows really, really slow. So, it's good to start celery about 12 weeks before your last frost. And celery also needs a really long season to grow. I pretty much will put my celery out as soon as I put my brassicas out, my cold hardy stuff, in the spring. I'll put my celery out, and I will leave that right in the ground until, you know, we get our frost in the fall. So it takes a really, really long growing season. But there's nothing like homegrown broccoli, or not broccoli, celery, because with celery, you can use that for so many things. You can use it like if you make homemade broth, or in soups or stews, or a lot of people like to have it for veggie trays. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with celery. And also, I know a lot of people use the celery leaves kind of like parsley, so they'll use the green in like soups and stews, kind of like they would with parsley. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. Alright, so we have those put in our soil blocks, and what I'm going to do is, so these soil blocks, we already have water in them, so I will literally just do a light mist over the top of them, like nothing crazy, because we just made these soil blocks and we don't want them to get too wet and fall apart. So I'm literally just going to do a quick mist over the top of these, and then they'll be good to go. I'll leave them until I see that they start drying out a little bit, and then I will just put a little bit of water in the bottom of this tray so that the soil blocks will soak it up. And the really nice thing about the soil blocks is you can actually see when they dry out. So unlike seed trays, you can't really see down into that seed cell what the actual seed cell looks like, if it has dried out or if there's still water in the bottom of it. So with the soil blocks, it's really nice because you can actually see if they've dried out and if they actually need to be watered. So I actually really like the soil blocks. I used them last year, and the really nice thing about them, I used these bigger ones last year for cucumbers and melons, because cucumbers and melons, they don't really like to be moved that much. So to put them in a seed tray where you would have to pull their roots out, it's going to mess with them and they're not going to grow as well. So to put them in a soil block where you can just pick up that soil block and then just put it into the ground, that's going to be much better for them. And especially like squash and stuff like that, you can do that with those as well. And the nice thing with soil blocks is, it doesn't have anything around it, so the roots, they don't get root bound, they just like keep growing out. So that is also a really nice thing about soil blocks. But I am going to be using trays with cells, and then also the soil blocks, because I use different things, different techniques for all the different things that I plant. So I will use soil blocks for certain things, and then I will also use seed trays for certain things. Alright, all, I hope you had a fun time learning about soil blocks. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.